The decision came from an unexpected source. Pirates from the Outer Rim had been watching the great standoff between the two empires and the mysterious human ships. They saw an opportunity that was too good to pass up, while the main fleets were. Distracted 300 civilian refugee ships were traveling through neutral space. Completely unprotected, Captain Wusung led the largest pirate fleet ever assembled in galactic history. Over 200 stolen and modified warships converged. On the refugee convoy, like a pack of hungry wolves, the civilian ships carried millions of evacuees from war-torn planets, including families with children who had never known safety. The pirate attack began without warning. Civilian transports that had no weapons and no shields found themselves surrounded by heavily armed raiders. The pirates demanded surrender and threatened to destroy any ship that tried to escape. It was a massacre waiting to happen. Commander Kyung-soo aboard the monitoring station detected the pirate attack and immediately sent distress signals to both main fleets, but the Vorthak and Kalari forces were too far away to respond in time. Even their fastest ships would take hours to reach the refugee convoy. The human ships moved before anyone realized what was happening. Captain Ji-hoon ordered his 3 vessels to engage the pirate fleet at maximum speed. The human ships accelerated so quickly that they seemed to disappear and reappear closer to the battle zone. What followed changed everything that anyone in the galaxy thought they knew about space combat. The human vessels moved in ways that completely ignored the laws of physics. Their ships turned at angles that should have torn them apart and accelerated at speeds that should have killed any living crew. The first human ship, commanded by Captain Min-soo, appeared in the middle of the pirate formation without any warning. The pirates tried to target the human vessel, but their weapons could not lock onto something moving so unpredictably. The human ship danced between enemy fire like it was performing an elegant ballet. Human weapons fired projectiles that curved around cover and changed direction in flight to hit their targets. Pirate ships that thought they were safe behind asteroid cover found themselves under attack from impossible angles. The human weapons seemed to think for themselves and hunt down their targets. The second human vessel attacked the pirate command ship with precision that defied understanding. Every shot hit exactly where it would cause maximum damage while avoiding areas that might harm captured civilians. The pirate flagship was disabled in minutes without a single casualty among the hostages. Aboard, Captain Tae-young commanded the third human ship as it engaged a group of pirates who were trying to board refugee transports. The human vessel positioned itself between the attackers and civilians, then generated an energy field that stopped pirate weapons from functioning while leaving civilian systems untouched. The entire pirate fleet was neutralized in less than 30 minutes. 200 heavily armed warships were either captured or disabled by 3 small human vessels that seemed to dance through space like they were playing a game rather than fighting for their lives. The most shocking part was that the humans chose to disable rather than destroy most of the pirate ships. They captured thousands of pirates alive and left them floating in space in disabled vessels for later judgment. Not a single refugee ship was lost, and human casualties were 0. Both the Vorthak and Kalari fleets watched in stunned silence as their tactical computers tried to analyze what they had just witnessed. The human ships had demonstrated technology that was centuries ahead of anything in the known galaxy. Their combat capabilities were beyond imagination. Admiral Chae-young ran the battle footage through every analysis program the Vorthak Empire possessed, but found no explanation for what she had seen. The human ships absorbed attacks that should have vaporized their hulls and fired weapons that seemed to violate several laws of physics. Commander Ji-won of the Kalari Observation Post studied the human combat techniques and realized her bioships would have been helpless against such opponents. The humans had moved faster than living reflexes could follow and struck with precision that no biological system could match. The demonstration achieved exactly what Captain Ji-hoon had intended. Both empires now understood they were dealing with a species whose military capabilities far exceeded their own. The humans had not just offered to mediate the war, they had proven they could enforce peace if necessary. Within hours of the pirate battle, Admiral Hyegen sent the first formal communication accepting human mediation terms. The Vorthak Empire could not ignore the overwhelming superiority the humans had displayed. They needed to negotiate rather than risk becoming enemies of such powerful beings. General Wu Jin of the Kalari forces followed with his own acceptance message within the same day. He could not allow his enemies to gain advantage by being more cooperative with the humans. The Federation had no choice but to accept mediation or face the possibility of fighting both humans and Vorthaks. The refugee convoy sent grateful messages to the human ships, thanking them for the rescue. Millions of civilians owed their lives to the mysterious strangers who had appeared from nowhere to save them. The human reputation for protecting innocent people spread quickly throughout neutral space. Captain Do Yun studied sensor recordings of the human weapons and realized they used technology that was completely unknown to galactic science. The projectiles seemed to be guided by artificial intelligence that could think and adapt during flight. Even the most advanced defensive systems would be useless against such weapons. News networks throughout the galaxy broadcast footage of the human rescue operation, showing their ships moving in ways that seemed almost magical. The demonstration had a profound psychological impact on populations that had lived their entire lives believing the war could never end. Military academies began emergency reviews of their tactical doctrines, realizing that everything they taught about space combat was obsolete when facing opponents with such advanced technology. Students who had dreamed of glorious battles suddenly understood they were studying warfare from a primitive era. The pirate defeat sent shockwaves through criminal organizations across the galaxy. Groups that had grown bold during the chaos of the war suddenly realized there was a new power in the galaxy that would not tolerate attacks on innocent civilians. Many pirate fleets disbanded rather than risk facing human justice. Scientists from both empires requested access to the battle data, hoping to understand human technology, but found themselves completely baffled. The human ships seemed to use principles that were beyond current scientific knowledge. Their power sources and propulsion systems defied explanation. Captain Minsu received communications from both fleet commanders requesting formal negotiations. The humans had achieved their goal of forcing both sides to accept mediation. The demonstration of overwhelming power had made further resistance seem pointless, and potentially suicidal religious leaders declared the human intervention a miracle, while others warned it might be the beginning of an alien conquest. The debate about human intentions spread across every inhabited world, but most people were simply grateful that someone finally had the power to end the endless war. The human ships resumed their patient waiting, but now both fleets knew they were dealing with beings who could destroy them easily if they chose to do so. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted dramatically in less than an hour of combat. Young officers throughout both fleets began questioning whether continuing the war made any sense when there were clearly more advanced civilizations watching from the shadows. The human demonstration had revealed how primitive their weapons and tactics really were. As Captain Ji-hoon prepared for the upcoming negotiations, he was satisfied that the first phase of his mission had succeeded. The galaxy would soon learn that humanity had methods for ending conflicts that were far more sophisticated than simple military superiority. The age of the Great Galactic War was ending, not because either side had won, but because a more powerful species had decided. It was time for the fighting to stop. The humans had kept their promise to demonstrate they could enforce peace whether the warring factions wanted it or not. Captain Ji-hoon stood in the center of his ship, watching hundreds of alien warships surrounding his small human fleet. His crew remained calm even though they were outnumbered by thousands to one. The bridge was quiet except for the soft humming of advanced computers that were analyzing everything about their alien neighbors. The human ships had been studying the galactic war for months before making contact. They had observed battles from the edge of solar systems and intercepted communications between both empires. Now they were ready to make an offer that would shock both sides. Commander Nari received the human transmission aboard her crystal ship and could hardly believe what she was hearing. The humans were proposing to end the 300-year war within one galactic year. They claimed they could bring permanent peace to the galaxy, but their conditions seemed impossible to accept. The human message was broadcast simultaneously to both fleets and every neutral world in the galaxy. Captain Jehoon spoke in a calm voice that somehow carried authority despite coming from an unknown species. He offered to mediate the conflict but demanded things that no military commander had ever agreed to before. Any faction that wanted human help would have to agree to an immediate ceasefire and allow human observers aboard their most important command ships. Even more shocking, the humans wanted access to military databases and strategic planning sessions they were asking for. Complete transparency from both sides. Admiral Cheung laughed when she first heard the human demands aboard her flagship. These newcomers with only 3 ships claimed they could solve a conflict that had destroyed countless civilizations. Her crystal vessels could phase through dimensions and strike from impossible angles. What could humans possibly know about galactic warfare? The Vorthak Military Council met in emergency session to discuss the human proposal. Admiral Seokjin argued that allowing aliens aboard their ships would be military suicide. The crystal phase technology was their greatest advantage, and sharing it with outsiders would be insanity. Young officers like Lieutenant Su-young disagreed with their older commanders. She pointed out that the war was already destroying both empires. Maybe it was time to try something completely different, even if it meant taking risks. The younger generation was tired of endless fighting. General Hunwoo of the Kalari Federation was equally skeptical about human claims. His bio-ships were living creatures bred for war over hundreds of generations. They could adapt to any enemy tactic and regenerate from damage that would destroy normal vessels. How could outsiders understand biological warfare? The Kalari command structure was divided between those who wanted to attack the humans immediately and those who thought they should at least listen to what the strangers had to say. Captain Minho supported negotiation while Admiral Yeren demanded immediate military action against the intruders. Ambassador Kyung-min from the Galactic Council contacted both fleets and urged them to consider the human offer seriously. The neutral worlds had watched trillions of beings die in the endless war. If there was even the smallest chance these humans could end the suffering, it was worth exploring. The human ships continued broadcasting their proposal every few hours, but they made no aggressive moves toward either fleet. They seemed content to wait while both empires debated what to do. This patience was somehow more unsettling than any threat would have been. Captain Unji studied the human vessels through her bio-ship's senses and noticed they were constantly scanning everything around them. The mysterious ships were learning about Vorthak crystal technology and Kalari bioengineering while remaining completely mysterious themselves. Days passed with both fleets holding position around the human ships. Neither side wanted to be the first to show weakness by either attacking or accepting the human terms. The standoff created the longest unofficial ceasefire in the history of the Galactic War. Intelligence reports from both empires tried to analyze what little they knew about human capabilities. The 3 ships had appeared using faster-than-light technology that was clearly superior to anything currently known. Their perfect translation abilities suggested they had been studying galactic civilization. For years, Commander Hyun-woo monitored communications from his deep space station and noticed that human ships were equipped with sensors far more advanced than anything he had ever seen. They could detect conversations happening inside ships from incredible distances while remaining invisible to most scanning attempts. The neutral worlds began sending their own diplomatic missions toward the human ships, hoping to establish independent contact. Everyone wanted to know where humans came from, and why they had decided to intervene in the galactic war now after remaining hidden for so long. Young people throughout the galaxy followed news of the human contact with excitement that their parents found disturbing for the first time in living memory. There was something happening that was not related to the war. Children who had never known peace began asking questions about what life might be like without fighting. Military academies on both sides held emergency sessions to discuss the implications of human technology. Students who had spent years learning conventional battle tactics suddenly realized their education might be obsolete. Everything they knew about space combat was based on fighting enemies with similar capabilities. Human proposal created political chaos within both empires. Peace factions that had been suppressed for decades began speaking openly about ending the war. Military contractors who profited from weapons sales lobbied against any negotiations with the mysterious newcomers. Captain Do-Yun found his bioship becoming increasingly agitated as the standoff continued. The living vessel could sense something different about the humans that made it nervous in ways it had never experienced before. Even the most experienced bioships seemed confused by the human presence. Religious leaders throughout the galaxy debated whether the human arrival was a sign of divine intervention or an ominous warning. Some species had ancient prophecies about strangers from beyond the stars who would either bring salvation or destruction to the galaxy. The humans continued to wait patiently while both empires struggled with the decision. Captain Jehoon knew that time was working in his favor. Every day, the ceasefire continued. Both sides lost momentum for resuming hostilities. The longer they waited, the harder it would be to start fighting again. Scientific communities tried to analyze the limited data available about human technology but found themselves completely baffled. The human ships used principles that seemed to ignore several fundamental laws of physics. Their power sources generated more energy than should be possible from such small vessels. As the debate continued within both military commands, it became clear that the younger generation was more willing to consider human mediation. Officers who had grown up during the worst years of the war were desperate for any chance at peace, while older veterans remained suspicious of foreign intervention. The human ships occasionally moved in patterns that seemed random, but careful analysis suggested they were testing the response times and coordination abilities of both fleets, without firing a shot or making any threats. The humans were gathering detailed intelligence about their potential enemies. Trade routes that had been disrupted by the war began showing signs of tentative recovery as merchants realized the fighting had stopped. Neutral worlds started planning for the possibility that peace might actually be achievable if the humans could deliver on their promises. After 7 days of debate, Admiral Taiho called a meeting of the Vorthak High Command to make a final decision about the human proposal. The Dao Crystal ships could not remain in position indefinitely, and both sides needed to either accept mediation or resume the war. The fate of the galaxy hung in balance as two ancient enemies considered trusting mysterious strangers who claimed they could end centuries of bloodshed. The humans waited quietly, confident that desperation would eventually overcome suspicion. Deep Space Monitoring Station. Omega-7 was the loneliest place in the galaxy. Commander Hyeon-woo had been stationed there for 5 years, watching empty space and listening to radio signals from distant battles. The station floated in the neutral zone between the two great empires where nothing interesting ever happened. That changed on a Tuesday morning when his sensors detected something impossible. 3 ships had appeared out of nowhere, moving faster than anything in the known galaxy. The computer systems could not identify what kind of ships they were, or even what they were made of. Their energy signatures did not match any known technology. Lieutenant Soo-young was drinking her morning coffee when the alarm started screaming. She ran to her station and saw the sensor readings that made no sense at all. The three unknown ships were perfectly smooth, with no visible weapons or communication arrays. They looked like they had been carved from a single piece of dark metal. The ships were not very big compared to the massive war vessels that both empires used, but something about them felt dangerous in a way that Soo-young could not explain. Her instruments showed energy readings that were off the charts. Yet the ships moved through space as quietly as ghosts. Commander Yeonwoo immediately sent emergency messages to both the Vorthak Empire and Kalari Federation, warning them about the mysterious visitors within hours. Both sides had dispatched their fastest ships to investigate. Everyone wanted to know who these strangers were and what they wanted in the middle of the war zone. Captain Minho of the Kalari Federation received the alert while his bioship was resting between battles. His living vessel immediately became agitated when he told it about the unknown ships. The bioship had never encountered anything it could not understand, but these new arrivals made it nervous in ways that worried its pilot. The Kalari fleet arrived first with 50 bioships that glowed with bioluminescent patterns in the darkness of space. The living vessels formed a defensive circle around the mysterious ships, trying to communicate through the biological telepathy they used with each other. But the strange ships remained completely silent. Admiral Chaeyoung led the Vorthak response force in her flagship crystal vessel that could phase between dimensions. Her crystal ships appeared around the unknown vessels like beautiful deadly flowers made of living glass. The phase technology allowed them to attack from angles that normal ships could never defend against. For 3 days, the strangers did nothing. They just floated in space, ignoring all attempts at communication. The Vorthak tried broadcasting in their musical crystal language. The Kalari sent biological chemical signals that their bioships used to talk to each other. Neutral world diplomats attempted contact using every known galactic language. The unknown ships seemed to be studying everything. Around them, passive sensors detected scanning beams so advanced that most equipment could not even register them. The mysterious visitors were learning about Vorthak crystal technology and Kalari bioengineering while giving away nothing about themselves. Both war fleets grew larger as more ships arrived from each empire. Neither side wanted to appear weak in front of these unknown aliens. Veterans from hundreds of battles found themselves nervous about ships that had never fired a shot. The mysterious vessels seemed to radiate confidence and barely contained power. Young officers like Ensign Do-hyun wondered if these might be weapons designed by the enemy faction to look like alien ships. Older commanders like Admiral Seok-jin worried that they might be dealing with an invasion force from outside the galaxy. Everything about the situation felt wrong and dangerous. The bioships of the Kalari Federation began behaving strangely in the presence of the mystery vessels. Living ships that had been calm and obedient for years started showing signs of fear and confusion. Some bioships refused to get close to the unknown vessels, while others seemed drawn to them against their pilots' wishes. On the third night, Lieutenant Yoonjin was monitoring communication channels when she detected the first signal from the mystery ships. It was not directed at any specific receiver, but broadcast on every frequency at the same time. The signal was strong enough to reach every inhabited world in the galaxy. The message was short and simple, but it changed everything. The unknown ships transmitted the same words in perfect translations of every known galactic language, including some ancient tongues that had been dead for thousands of years. The message said, "We are called humans." Within minutes, every news network in the galaxy was broadcasting the first contact announcement. Populations on both sides of the war stopped fighting to listen to reports about these humans who had appeared from nowhere. Speculation ran wild about where they came from and what they wanted. The human ships had demonstrated technology that was clearly superior to anything either Empire possessed. Their ability to translate every galactic language perfectly suggested they had been watching and studying galactic civilization for a long time. This raised uncomfortable questions about how long humans had been observing the war captain. Yunji studied the sensor data from her Kalari Bio ship and realized the humans had not just appeared randomly, they had chosen to reveal themselves at the exact center of the most contested region in the galaxy, right between the two main battle fleets where their presence would have maximum impact. Admiral Chang Min ordered his Vorthak crystal ships to maintain defensive positions while he tried to understand what kind of beings they were dealing with. The humans had made first contact in a way that demonstrated they were not afraid of either empire. Their timing suggested they had been planning this moment carefully. Diplomatic channels buzzed with activity as both sides tried to decide how to respond to the human presence. Some wanted to attack immediately to test the stranger's capabilities. Others argued for attempting peaceful contact. The neutral worlds sent their best diplomats racing toward the contact zone. The humans remained silent after their initial announcement. 3 ships against hundreds of war vessels from 2 of the most powerful military forces in galactic history. Yet somehow the humans seemed to be in control of the situation. Their presence changed the entire dynamic of the ancient conflict. Commander Kyung-soo noticed that both fleets had stopped maneuvering against each other for the first time in decades. The arrival of the humans had created an unexpected ceasefire as both sides focused their attention on these mysterious newcomers. Everyone wanted to know what the humans planned to do next. Intelligence. Officers from both empires worked around the clock, trying to analyze every detail about the human ships. Their hulls seemed to be made from materials that absorbed sensor scans. The energy signatures suggested power sources far beyond current galactic technology. Even the way they moved through space defied known physics. As the standoff continued, more ships arrived from both empires until the area around the humans became crowded with hundreds of warships. The largest concentration of military force in galactic history was gathering around 3 small ships whose occupants remained mysteriously silent. The humans had achieved something that centuries of diplomacy could not accomplish. They had brought the 2 warring empires to the same place at the same time without anyone firing a shot. Whether this was intentional or accidental remained to be seen, but the implications were staggering. News of the human contact spread across the galaxy faster than any previous event. Civilians, who had lived their entire lives knowing only war, suddenly had something new to think about. Children asked their parents who the humans were and where they came from, but nobody had any answers. On monitoring stations throughout, neutral space operators watched and waited to see what would happen next. The humans had demonstrated they possessed technology far superior to either warring faction. This meant they could probably destroy both fleets if they wanted to. The question was, what did they actually want? Deep in the computer cores of both empires, artificial intelligence systems tried to calculate the probability of various human intentions, but they had no data to work with. The humans were completely unknown variables in equations that had been running for 300 years. As the 4th day began, Admiral Taeho found himself staring at tactical displays that showed a situation unlike anything in military history. The eternal war between crystal ships and bio-vessels had been put on hold because of 3 mysterious ships whose occupants called themselves humans. Admiral Taeho stood in front of the big screen, showing space battles far away. His dark eyes looked tired from watching the same fights happen over and over again for so many years. The Galactic Council chamber was full of alien leaders from different worlds, but they all had the same worried look on their faces. 300 years had passed since the Great War began. Nobody alive could remember what peace felt like. The Vorthak Empire with their crystal ships that could disappear and reappear anywhere they wanted had been fighting the Kalari Federation and their living metal ships that could heal themselves from almost any damage. Both sides were so strong that neither could win. Commander Nari walked through the halls of her crystal ship, feeling the smooth walls pulse with energy. Her people, the Vorthak, could make their ships phase through solid rock and metal like ghosts. This gave them a big advantage in battle, but somehow the Kalari always found ways to fight back. She had been born during the war, grew up during the war, and would probably die during the war. The latest battle reports showed the same story as always. Hundreds of ships destroyed on both sides. Planets turned into burning wastelands. Millions of lives lost. But the battle lines on the star maps barely moved at all. It was like watching two giant monsters fight each other until they both collapsed from exhaustion, then getting up to fight again. The next day, Captain Do-hyun sat in his command chair, which was not really a chair, but part of his living ship. The bio-vessel responded to his thoughts and emotions. When he felt angry, the ship would glow red. When he felt sad, it would turn blue. Right now, it was a dull gray color, because he felt hopeless about the endless fighting. His ship was alive in every way that mattered. It could think and feel and even dream. The metal walls would heal cuts, and the engines would repair themselves if they got damaged. But after 20 years of fighting together, both he and his ship partner were tired of war. They had fought in over 100 battles and seen terrible things that would give anyone nightmares. Young Kalari children learned to pilot bio-ships before they could walk properly. Schools taught battle tactics instead of art and music. Every family had lost someone to the war. Mothers would sing lullabies about brave warriors who died fighting the crystal ship enemies. Fathers would tell bedtime stories about the day when their side would finally win the war on the Vorthak worlds. The story was the same. Children played games where they pretended to phase through walls and attack imaginary Kalari enemies. They learned math by calculating how fast their crystal ships could travel between dimensions. History lessons were all about famous battles and great military leaders who had won important victories against the living metal ships. The neutral worlds watched in horror as both empires grew more desperate and violent every year. The weapons got bigger and more destructive. Trade routes that had been safe for thousands of years became war zones, where merchant ships might get attacked by accident. Refugee camps were everywhere, filled with families who had lost their homes. When their planets became battlefields, some alien species went completely extinct, not because anyone wanted to kill them, but because they lived too close to where the fighting happened. Their worlds got caught in the crossfire between crystal ships and bio-vessels. Nobody even remembered their names anymore. They became just numbers in casualty reports that no one had time to read. Ambassador Kyung-min from one of the neutral worlds tried to organize peace talks for the 18th time. She had watched 17 previous attempts fail when one side or the other would launch surprise attacks during negotiations. Trust between the Vorthak and Kalari had been broken so many times that both sides expected betrayal from any peace offer. The galactic economy was falling apart. Trade between star systems dropped to almost nothing because merchant ships were afraid to travel through war zones. Entire industries that depended on materials from both empires had to shut down. Unemployment was high on neutral worlds as refugee populations grew larger every year. Some of the older aliens remembered what life had been like before the war started. They would sit in refugee camps and tell stories about the good old days when different species worked together and traded freely. But the younger generation thought these were just fairy tales. No one under 50 years old had ever seen real peace. Military factories on both sides worked day and night to build more ships and weapons. The Vorthak crystal foundries created new ships that could phase through multiple dimensions at once. The Kalari biolabs grew bigger and stronger living vessels with new abilities. Neither side could produce ships fast enough to replace the ones they lost in battle. Resources that should have been used for hospitals, schools, and parks got spent on military equipment. Instead, planets that used to grow food crops now had weapon manufacturing plants. Children who should have been playing and learning had to work in factories to support the war effort. Even the computers and artificial intelligence systems on both sides had been programmed to think only about war. Their databases were full of battle tactics, enemy ship designs, and weapon specifications. They had forgotten how to calculate trade routes or plan civilian construction projects. Everything in both empires existed only to support the endless fighting scientists who used to study stars and planets now spent their time creating new ways to destroy enemy ships. Art and music became propaganda tools to keep people motivated to fight. Books and movies were all about brave warriors and evil enemies on the other side. Culture itself had become a weapon in the war. Both sides had huge fleets of ships patrolling the borders between their territories. The crystal ships would appear without warning attack. Kalari positions then disappear back into phase space. The bio vessels would wait patiently for weeks, then strike. Fast with living weapons that could think for themselves and adapt to any defense. Space itself had become sick from all the fighting. Debris from destroyed ships floated everywhere, making it dangerous for anyone to travel. Some areas had so much wreckage that they looked like graveyards full of twisted metal and broken crystal pieces. Even the stars seemed dimmer in systems where too many battles had been fought. The war had become like a terrible machine that fed on itself. Each battle created hatred that justified the next battle. Each loss demanded revenge, which led to more losses. Both sides were trapped in a cycle of violence that seemed impossible to break. The young soldiers fighting now were the grandchildren of the soldiers who started the war. Nobody believed the fighting would ever end anymore. Peace talks were just political theater that everyone went through, but nobody expected to work. Some military leaders on both sides secretly worried that both empires would destroy each other completely, leaving nothing but empty space where two great civilizations used to exist. As Admiral Tejo looked at the battle reports coming in from 17 different star systems, he wondered if future generations would remember what they had been fighting for in the first place. The original reasons for the war had been forgotten long ago, replaced by simple hatred and the desire for revenge. The war had lasted so long that it felt like a natural law of the universe, like gravity or the speed of light. Young people could not imagine any other way to live. They thought eternal conflict was just how intelligent species were supposed to behave when they met each other among the stars. The peace station appeared in space like magic. Captain Jehoon supervised its construction using technology that assembled matter at the molecular level. The entire facility was built in less than a week, using machines that worked faster than anything either empire had ever seen. Dr. Subin arrived aboard the human flagship to lead the negotiation process. She was a small woman with dark eyes that seemed to see everything but revealed nothing. Her reputation as a mediator was unknown to the galactic powers, but her confidence suggested she had ended conflicts before. The station was designed to impress every detail, calculated to show human superiority while respecting both alien cultures. The architecture combined elements from Vorthak crystal, designs, and Kalari bioforms, but with engineering that was clearly more advanced than either civilization could achieve. Ambassador Gyun-woo led the Vorthak delegation aboard the peace station. He had negotiated 17 failed peace treaties over the past century and expected this attempt to fail as well. But something about the human mediator made him nervous in ways he could not explain. Admiral Yaren commanded the Kalari delegation and brought her most experienced diplomats to the talks. She had studied every previous peace attempt and knew exactly why they had failed. The question was whether these mysterious humans actually understood the deep hatred between the two empires. Dr. Subin opened the negotiations with a presentation that shocked both delegations. The humans had not only studied the current conflict in detail, but they had compiled a complete historical analysis going back 300 years to the very beginning of the war. The human mediator revealed information that should have been impossible for outsiders to obtain. She knew about secret weapon projects that even some military leaders had never heard of. She had details about classified battles and hidden supply bases that were supposed to be state secrets. Captain Minho watched in horror as Dr. Subin displayed tactical plans that were supposed to be locked in the most secure computer systems in the galaxy. The humans had somehow accessed military databases from both empires and compiled intelligence. That was more complete than anything either side possessed about their enemies. The presentation continued with analysis that cut through centuries of propaganda and revealed the true causes of the conflict. Dr. Subin showed how the war had been prolonged by profiteers within both governments who made money selling weapons and supplies to their own military forces. Ambassador Kyung-min from the neutral worlds sat in stunned silence as the human mediator proved that several key battles had been deliberately extended by contractors who profited from the fighting. Both sides had been manipulated by their own people for economic gain. The humans revealed that the original causes of the war had been resolved decades ago, but both empires had continued fighting because they no longer remembered what they were fighting for. The conflict had become self-sustaining, powered by hatred and desire for revenge, rather than any real disagreement. Dr. Subin displayed evidence that peaceful coexistence was not only possible, but would benefit both civilizations enormously. The Vorthak crystal technology and Kalari bioengineering could complement each other in ways that would advance both species far beyond what they could achieve. Separately, Commander Hyun-woo listened from his monitoring station as the human mediator systematically destroyed every argument for continuing the war. She proved that both sides had been weakening themselves, while outside threats grew stronger in other parts of the galaxy. The most devastating revelation was that several alien species had been planning to invade both empires once they had exhausted themselves fighting each other. The galactic war had made both civilizations vulnerable to enemies they did not even know existed. Admiral Seok-jin demanded to know how the humans had obtained classified information from secured systems. Dr. Subin calmly explained that human technology could access any computer network in the galaxy. Their intelligence capabilities were as advanced as their military technology. The Kalari delegation protested that infiltrating their bio-neural networks should have been impossible. The living computers that ran their ships were supposed to be immune to outside interference. But the humans had apparently found ways to communicate directly with biological systems. Dr. Subin revealed that humans had been monitoring the galactic war for over 50 years before making contact. They had studied both civilizations in detail and understood their strengths and weaknesses better than either side understood themselves. Captain Yoonji asked why the humans cared about ending this particular conflict if they were so advanced. The human response was simple and chilling. War was disrupting human expansion plans for the galaxy. Both empires were consuming resources that humanity intended to claim. The revelation changed the entire nature of the negotiations. The humans were not acting as neutral mediators trying to bring peace. They were a conquering force that preferred cooperation to conquest, but would take what they wanted regardless of alien preferences. General Hyun-woo realized that the humans had ended similar conflicts throughout their expansion into space. They had developed efficient methods for dealing with primitive species that insisted on fighting each other instead of accepting human authority. Dr. Subin displayed examples of other galactic regions where humans had established peaceful order by ending local conflicts. The pattern was always the same. Demonstrate overwhelming superiority, offer reasonable terms, then enforce compliance through whatever means necessary. The negotiations continued for weeks as the human mediator systematically addressed every concern raised by both delegations. She had solutions for territorial disputes, trade agreements, and mutual defense pacts that would benefit everyone involved. Ambassador Yoonjin noticed that all human solutions involved placing both empires under human guidance during a transition period. The humans would monitor compliance with peace agreements and ensure that neither side violated the terms of surrender. Young officers like Lieutenant Soo-young began to understand that they were not negotiating a peace treaty, but terms of surrender to a superior force. The humans were offering vassalage disguised as mediation. They could rule through cooperation or conquest, but they would rule. The human mediator made it clear that rejection of their terms would result in direct intervention. Both empires would be conquered, and their populations scattered across the galaxy as refugees. The choice was between peaceful submission and violent subjugation. Captain Jehoon monitored the negotiations from his ship and was satisfied with the progress Dr. Subin was following standard human protocols for integrating primitive civilizations into their expanding empire. The galaxy would be more orderly under human management as the talks continued. Both delegations realized they had no real choice. The humans possessed technology that made resistance impossible and had intelligence networks that made secrecy pointless. They could cooperate and retain some autonomy, or resist, and lose everything. The final treaty was drafted with terms that favored human interests while providing enough benefits to both empires to make acceptance palatable. Both sides would gain access to human technology and protection in exchange for accepting human authority over their expansion and military activities. Dr. Subin presented the completed peace agreement with the calm confidence of someone who had never failed to achieve her objectives. The document would end the 300-year war exactly as the humans had promised, but at a price that neither empire had expected to pay. The age of galactic independence was ending as two ancient civilizations prepared to sign treaties that would make them junior partners in an expanding human empire. The war would end because humanity willed it to end regardless of what the combatants preferred. Both Admiral Teho and General Wu Jin studied the treaty terms and realized they were looking at the beginning of a new galactic order. The humans had achieved through superior technology and intelligence what centuries of warfare had failed to accomplish. The peace treaty was signed exactly 6 months after the humans first appeared. Admiral Teho and General Wu Jin put their names on the document that would end 300 years of warfare and place both their civilizations under human guidance. The ceremony was broadcast to every inhabited world in the galaxy. Colonel Taeyong supervised the dismantling of forward military bases as Vorthak and Kalari forces withdrew to their new borders. The process moved smoothly with human observers, monitoring every step. Neither side dared violate the treaty terms with humanity watching their every move. The first benefit of peace became apparent within weeks. Trade routes that had been closed for centuries reopened as merchant ships began, traveling safely between former enemy territories. Captain Minho found his bioship adapting to peacetime patrol duties, protecting traders instead of hunting enemy warships. Refugee camps that had existed for generations began emptying as displaced. Populations returned to their homeworlds. Families separated by the war were reunited for the first time in decades. Children met grandparents they had only heard about in stories. The economic transformation was dramatic. Military factories were converted to produce civilian goods instead of weapons. Planets that had been strip-mined to build warships began growing food crops again. The standard of living improved rapidly as resources shifted from destruction to construction. Commander Nari discovered that Vorthak crystal technology, combined with Kalari bioengineering, produced innovations that neither civilization could have achieved alone. The phase shift crystals could be grown using biological processes, creating materials that were stronger and more flexible than anything previously known. Young scientists like Dr. Kyung-soo began collaborative research projects between former enemies. They developed new medical treatments using Kalari biological knowledge and Vorthak dimensional technology. Diseases that had plagued both species for millennia were cured within the first year of cooperation. However, the price of peace became clear as human colonies began appearing throughout the galaxy. Captain Jehoon established the first settlement on a world that had been contested between the two empires for over a century. The human colonists arrived with technology that terraformed the entire planet. In months, Ambassador Dong Yun noticed that humans preferred cooperation to conquest, but made it clear that resistance was not acceptable. Species that worked with humanity prospered under human guidance, while those that opposed human expansion found themselves isolated and struggling. The Galactic Council was reformed. Under human supervision with representatives from both former enemy empires serving together for the first time, the Council had real authority to prevent conflicts, but all major decisions required human approval before implementation. Captain Yunji adapted to serving aboard ships with mixed crews of Vorthak and Kalari personnel. The bio-vessels learned to work with crystal technology, while Vorthak phase ships incorporated living components. The fusion of technologies produced vessels more advanced than either design. Alone children who had grown up during the war struggled to adapt to peace. Young people like Ensign Do Hyun had to learn new skills for civilian careers instead of military service. Educational systems were redesigned to teach cooperation and trade instead of battle tactics and enemy identification. The human military presence remained small but highly visible. A few human ships in each system were enough to maintain order. Their advanced technology made larger forces unnecessary. Everyone knew that resistance would be futile against such overwhelming superiority. Religious leaders debated whether the human arrival represented salvation or conquest. Some species worshipped humans as divine beings who had ended their suffering. Others warned that accepting human rule meant losing their independence and cultural identity forever. Admiral Cheung found herself commanding a joint defense fleet that included both Vorthak and Kalari vessels. The former, enemies worked together to patrol trade routes and respond to emergencies. The cooperation that had seemed impossible during the war became routine under human supervision. Pirates and raiders who had operated during the chaos of war quickly discovered that human justice was swift and final. Criminal organizations that had grown powerful by taking advantage of the conflict were dismantled by human security forces within months. The neutral worlds that had suffered during the war experienced unprecedented prosperity under human protection. Trade flourished as human technology eliminated the dangers that had made commerce risky. Ambassador Yunjin worked to establish new economic partnerships between species that had never trusted each other. Dr. Subin moved on to other sectors where conflicts required resolution. Her methods had proven successful in ending the Galactic War, and humanity was expanding its influence to other regions where primitive species insisted on fighting each other instead of accepting human authority. Scientific research accelerated dramatically as human knowledge became available to both former enemy civilizations. Technologies that would have taken centuries to develop were shared freely in exchange for continued cooperation. The galaxy entered a period of rapid technological advancement. Captain Minsu established human monitoring stations throughout the former war zone. These facilities kept watch over both empires, ensuring compliance with treaty terms. While providing humanitarian assistance and technological support, the stations became symbols of human authority. The transformation was not without problems. Some veterans of the war could not adapt to peace and formed resistance movements that opposed human rule. These groups were quickly identified and neutralized by human intelligence networks that seemed to know everything about everyone. Young people adapted more easily to the new galactic order. Students like Cadet Jiwan trained for careers in interspecies cooperation and galactic commerce instead of military service. The education system emphasized human values of efficiency, order, and progress. Cultural exchange between former enemies produced art, music, and literature that reflected the new reality of peace. Vorthak crystal sculptures incorporated Kalari biological elements, while bioships began using phase technology to create impossible architectural structures. The human population in the galaxy grew steadily as more colonists arrived from Earth and other human worlds. Each new settlement demonstrated technology that was decades ahead of anything the local species possessed. Human cities became centers of learning and trade that attracted beings from across. The Galaxy Captain Do-hyun commanded one of the new mixed crews that included humans Vorthok and Kalari working together. His bioship had learned to communicate with human technology, creating a fusion of organic and artificial intelligence that was more capable than either system alone. As the first year of peace ended, Ambassador Kyung-min compiled a report on the transformation of galactic civilization. The war that had seemed eternal was now just a memory as two ancient enemies worked. Together under human guidance, the galaxy had traded the chaos of conflict for the stability of human rule. The report concluded that humanity had achieved something unprecedented in galactic history. They had ended a seemingly hopeless war not through military conquest, but by demonstrating such overwhelming superiority that resistance became pointless. The other species had chosen cooperation over extinction. Captain Ji-hoon prepared his ship for departure to another sector, where human expansion required the resolution of local conflicts. His mission in this region was complete. The galaxy had learned to accept human